How do we wrestle with despair? Sometimes it's hard to name that feeling, that experience. It is a hard and challenging and painful experience, despair is. I think it's something that everyone can recognize when they are in it, or like that saying about pornography. I don't really know how to define it, but I know it when I experience it, or I know it when I see it. Despair is very, very challenging. It's the nature of what despair is. And yet, there is an incredible power and empowerment when we can acknowledge that we are experiencing despair, or when despair is present in our lives. There's a huge difference between giving in to despair and acknowledging that we feel despair. Those are not the same things. Now, I do not mean to suggest in any way, shape, or form that there is any kind of judgment on either one of those, because despair in and of itself is an incredibly overwhelming and powerful experience. It is the dark room after the candle has been extinguished. It is the sunset after a devastating storm. It is the irrevocable sense and knowing that life will never be the same. That's weighty and that matters. Our society often puts a tremendous currency in the sense of value on positive emotions and positive experiences. Think positive. It's going to get better. Suck it up and keep going. You got this. All of which might be true at certain times. So, wrestling with despair, the image that comes is like wrestling with a snake, a huge serpent, or wrestling with a bear. It's huge and it's overwhelming. And in the same way as some fairy tales and myths, the most overpowering creature sometimes can transform, sometimes can shapeshift into something different. When there is despair, for whatever reason, we have a depth of feeling. And that depth of feeling is like a huge well that has opened up, a sinkhole that has occurred in our life, a Grand Canyon before it was ever named. And that matters. It matters to have that acknowledgement and that sense that in this place, in this dark room after the candle has been extinguished, or at sunset after a devastating storm, that we don't know what will happen. None of this is to suggest transforming the wrestling with despair into an embrace. That might happen. And sometimes despair really sucks. Acknowledging that we have despair, that we experience it, doesn't mean that we are defined by the presence of that despair. It doesn't mean that we are conscribed to always being in that place, even though it feels like we will be. So, how do we wrestle with despair? We breathe, we continue to inhale and exhale. And in that place where we are certain that we are completely alone and that no one could understand what we are experiencing, as we breathe, we can recall that we are not alone in this despair, even if we cannot see it. For in that dark room, after the candle has been extinguished, we cannot see the others who are there, loving us, encouraging us, reminding us of the light that we carry within our hearts. How do we wrestle with despair? We carry on. I believe that despair is a heavy weight, and I believe that it is present in this world. And I believe that you are equal to the task of breathing in and out in the midst of that change.